Question 1. What is the purpose of using data grid control? Answer. The data grid control is used to display the fields of the table. It is basically associated with the data source that is present in the column of a table. Data grid provides the access to the rows that allows the control to be taken to the record in the data source. Data grid control provides various features like editing, selection, deleting, paging and sorting. Data grid control allows the user to write the input to bring the output on the web front. It can contain the executable scripts or SQL statements. Data grid control uses the validation server control to validate the data rows and columns of the table. Question 2. Why is the update strategy not preferred to be used in data grid control? Answer. The update strategy is inefficient to provide the updates to the database for each of the grid row. The updates sent are not sufficient to show the changes that are being made every minute per seconds. Manual logic needs to be updated to check for the changes that has taken place between the controls in a particular row in grid. Comparisons are hard to make between different datasets and databases that involves a round trip. No checking of the database take place to see the updations and changes made in it after some time. Question 3. What are the ways in which the functionalities can be added to data grid control data source? Answer. Data grid control allows the user to modify and manage the records without adding the new ones. To add the functionality, following things need to be done. Add a new record in the data source for the grid and assign an ID to the record. Put a placeholder values in the properties area for columns and make a column such that it can't be null. Rebind the data grid control to the source through which the modification can be done. Determine the place where the record will appear on the grid. Update the record so that it will be automatic when the user clicks on it or updates a link or a new record is added. Question 4. Write a program to control the column width, height and alignment of data grid. Answer. Data grid control has the control over the rows and columns sizes that fits the height and width of the grid. Auto-generate columns property has to be false to control the column characteristics, and it doesn't let the column to generate automatically. The column width can be created using the style element for a particular column. It can also set the width of the element. Question 5. What is the difference between Windows Forms and Web Forms data grid control? Answer. Web Forms have the collection of pages that perform the round trip for the processing on the server, whereas Windows Forms doesn't perform that well on the processing front. Web Forms data grid control uses less built-in functionality, whereas Windows Forms uses more built-in functionality. Web Forms data grid control doesn't support detailed master data structure, whereas Windows Forms supports the data structure. Web Forms data grid control supports the two-way binding and the automation is being done for the data, whereas Windows Forms doesn't provide two-way binding and manual code need to be written. Web Forms allow users to edit only one row at a time and doesn't have support for sorting and no event handles, whereas Windows Forms provide all that. Question 6. How is it possible to edit the data in DataGrid? Answer. DataGrid provides a way to edit the data and set the properties to create a good user interface. DataGrid provides a way to create an application that provides interactivity by using the set or unset of the methods like can user add rows, can user delete rows, can user reorder columns, etc. To edit, look for the properties that starts with can and change it according to the requirements. Adding or modifying of a row or data affects the collection of the items that is assigned to the item source. Question 7. What is the purpose of external enumerables used in DataGrid? Answer. External enumerables are used to collect the collection of items that are supplied with the data grid. The data that is being displayed is usually having external sources like database connection, so DataGrid uses an external collection object. Before collection any data, it is important to set the item's source property and an object type is created to hold the data. Question 8. Write a program that adds two columns binded with the same properties and having column headings using XAML. Answer. Columns can be added in their own way by making two different columns and adding them using the function of column.add. The order of the columns is not determined by the order in which they are shown or stored. To list the order, use of display index property is used. To add the columns that are binded with one another, first there is a need to create the data and add the data to the items collection. XAML is used to instantiate and initialize the two columns and produces the same result with the inbuilt function as normal language. Question 9. What are the ways that properties can be shown in DataGrid? Answer. DataGrid shows the properties in the form of columns, and each column stores some value. DataGrid need 2 columns, and each of them is bound to have one property each, and that is also different from one another. After creating the 2 columns with the properties, the binding should be done of those columns to display the data. Question 10. Write a program to display the use of multiple columns in DataGrid. Answer. The DataGrid that is used contains the provision to have multiple columns to contain the data in an easy and ordered way. Every column in the multiple columns is having different property of the objects and having collection of items. The objects are named according to the properties given from get/set_properties, and the public data field in this case can't be created. Question 11. How does the binding work in DataGrid? Answer. Binding works on the basis of specifying an object and a property to the object that needs to be binded. The property of the object is stored and retrieved of the data that is involved in binding. The collection of data is being stored in a DataGrid, and it is being provided by using collection view object that determines all the objects in the collection to be used as binding. Collection view object points always to the current item that is being bound to a single object and consists of single property. The collection view is used as a base class, and it can be used to navigate the object's current position throughout the collection. The data context is being set to one of the objects with the paths already defined that is being pointed to the binding object assigned to a column. Question 12. Write a program to do column sorting, reordering and resizing. Answer. The DataGrid provides the features on the column which can be sorted, reordered and resized according to the requirements. The columns can be enabled and disabled by using the column and row properties in the program. Question 13. Write a program to show different selection modes in DataGrid. Answer. The DataGrid includes the selection modes that can be configured and customized according to the requirements. It includes the selection modes property as selection mode and selection unit. The selection mode of the DataGrid can be set to either single or extended. This way it defines the selection of one or more units. Selection unit is used to define the scope of one selection unit in regards to the cell row by using the data as cell and row header and full row. Question 14. What are the tasks that are involved after the drop-down list gets created? Answer. Drop-down lists are easy to add on a template column and then added further in HTML view. There are 2 tasks involved after populating the drop-down list, and they are as follows. Populate the list that is being used by the web application or any application according to the requirement. Reselect an appropriate item to be added on the list of drop-down that is just being created. The drop-down list gets created with the field already being filled and the category being pre-selected from before that has to be displayed in the beginning. Question 15. Explain the procedure to display uneditable drop-down list. Answer. To display uneditable drop-down list, it requires template column that is present in the grid and an object of item template that consists of controls like data bound, use of label controls that produces the current value of the field present in the record. Adding of the drop-down list takes place by using the object edit item template. This object adds a column in the template and the property can be customized according to the requirement. Drop-down list control can be taken from the edit item template property editor and changes being made into it to represent it on the web front. The template column of the drop-down list can be added to HTML view.